Commander Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive crystal dome, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The Galactic Council chamber stretched out around him like a giant fishbowl, its walls made of some strange alien material that seemed to glow with its own light. 47 different alien species sat in curved rows above him, their eyes focused on the small group of humans standing on the floor below. Jake had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now. He thought he understood how the galaxy worked. He thought humans could find their place among the stars through diplomacy and cooperation. Looking up at the cold faces staring down at him, he realized how wrong he had been. Lieutenant Amy Parker stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back in perfect military posture. She had warned him this day might come. So had the others in their small delegation, Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez, Scientist Dr. Lisa Brooks, and Colonel Sam Taylor. They had all seen the signs that the Council was growing tired of humanity's rapid expansion into space. The Zephyrian Chancellor rose from his seat at the center of the chamber. He was tall and thin, with skin so pale it was almost transparent. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the dome like the sound of breaking glass. The Galactic Council has reviewed the charges against the species known as humanity, the Chancellor began. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. In the past 10 years since first contact, humans have violated the sacred doctrine of peaceful expansion on no fewer than 17 occasions. Jake felt his jaw tighten. The sacred doctrine was a set of rules written by species who had taken centuries to expand beyond their homeworlds. Humans had built 3 thriving colonies in just 10 years, and apparently that was too fast for the Council's liking. The human colony on New Boston was established without proper environmental impact studies, the Chancellor continued. The settlement on Liberty Station included military installations that violate our weapons treaties. The colony called Haven's Rest was built on a world that had been marked for future Zephyrian expansion. That world was uninhabited, Jake said, his voice cutting through the dome's strange acoustics. We followed every law in the colonial charter, the Chancellor's pale eyes fixed on him. You followed the letter of our laws while ignoring their spirit. Humans expand too quickly. You reproduce too rapidly. You consume resources at an unsustainable rate. Most concerning of all, you solve every problem with violence or the threat of violence. A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Jake could see agreement in many of their faces. The Council had always been uncomfortable with humanity's military traditions. While other species spent decades debating conflicts, humans were used to making quick decisions and acting on them. We have never attacked another species, Amy said firmly. Every weapon we carry is for defense. Defense against whom? Asked a Kilani representative, his insect-like head clicking as he spoke. Before humans arrived, this sector had known peace for over 2 centuries. Now suddenly every species feels the need to increase their military budgets. Because you're afraid of us, Colonel Taylor said bluntly. But fear and aggression are 2 different things. The Chancellor raised one long hand for silence. The decision has been made. By unanimous vote of all 47 member species, humanity is found guilty of violating the sacred doctrine of peaceful expansion and the Treaty of Harmonious Coexistence. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Unanimous. Not a single species had spoken up for humanity. The sentence is as follows, the Chancellor continued. All human colonies beyond the Sol system are to be abandoned within 60 standard days. All human vessels are to withdraw to Earth's original solar system immediately. Humanity is stripped of all trading rights, all technological exchange privileges, and all protection under galactic law. The dome fell silent except for the hum of alien technology. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Furthermore, the Chancellor said, humanity is forbidden from leaving the Sol system for a period of 500 standard years. Any human vessel found beyond the orbit of Pluto will be destroyed without warning. Amy's face had gone white. Danny was staring at the floor. Dr. Brooks had tears in her eyes. Only Colonel Taylor seemed unsurprised, his expression grim, but not shocked. 500 years, Jake said quietly. You're condemning our entire species to prison. "We are giving you time to learn wisdom," the Chancellor replied. "Perhaps in 5 centuries humanity will have evolved beyond its current aggressive tendencies." Jake looked around the chamber one more time. Some of the aliens looked satisfied. Others seemed uncomfortable with the harsh sentence but unwilling to speak against it. A few actually looked sad, as if they regretted what had to be done. "Is there anything else you wish to say before this session ends?" the Chancellor asked. Jake thought about making a speech. He thought about pleading for mercy, or threatening consequences, or explaining how wrong they all were about humanity. Instead, he simply said, "We'll remember this." The Chancellor nodded. "We hope you do. Perhaps it will help you become the species the galaxy needs you to be." Within an hour, Jake and his team were aboard their small diplomatic ship, watching the massive council station shrink behind them. Alien patrol ships surrounded them as they headed back toward Earth, making sure they didn't try to deviate from their assigned course. 500 years, Amy said, slumping in her chair. "By the time we're allowed back out here, everyone we know will be dead. Our colonies will be dust. Our kids won't even remember what it was like to walk on other worlds," Danny added. Jake stared out at the stars that had suddenly become forbidden territory. Each point of light represented possibilities that had just been stolen from humanity. Worlds they would never see, aliens they would never meet, technologies they would never learn. But as he watched those distant suns, something else began to grow in his chest. Not despair, but something harder and more dangerous. The Council thought they were teaching humanity a lesson. They thought exile would make humans humble and obedient. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. "Danny," Jake said quietly, "how long would it take us to build ships they can't detect?" The engineer looked up, surprised. "Sir?" "Dr. Brooks, what do you know about quantum tunnel theory?" The scientist blinked. "The theoretical physics? It's never been successfully tested, but in theory you could move through space without using hyperspace lanes." "Colonel Taylor," Jake continued, "if we had 5 years to prepare, could we build a military that could defend itself against Council enforcement fleets?" The old soldier's eyes began to gleam. "Give me 5 years and I'll build you a military that could take on the entire Council." Amy was staring at him now. "Jake, what are you thinking?" He turned away from the viewport and looked at his team. These weren't just diplomats and scientists anymore. They were the advance guard of something the galaxy had never seen before. "I'm thinking the Council just made the biggest mistake in galactic history," he said. "They think exile is punishment. They're about to learn it's an opportunity." The ship continued toward Earth, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the aliens celebrated their victory over humanity's dangerous ambitions. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Dr. Marcus Webb wiped sweat from his forehead as he stared at the equations covering every wall of his underground laboratory. 5 years had passed since the Council's exile, and most of the galaxy believed humanity was trapped in their home, system like rats in a cage. They were wrong. The laboratory was hidden 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, one of dozens of secret research facilities that had been built since Earth's return from the Council chambers. Above ground, the world looked defeated. News broadcasts spoke of economic collapse and the loss of humanity's future among the stars. But below ground, the greatest minds on Earth were working on something the aliens had never imagined. "Run the test again," Marcus said to his assistant, Dr. Jenny Clark, "and this time, increase the quantum field by 12%. Jenny nodded and began typing commands into the computer. On the other side of the laboratory, a small metal sphere sat inside a complex ring of machinery. For 3 years, Marcus had been trying to crack the secret of quantum tunnel drives, a theoretical technology that could move ships through space without using the hyperspace lanes that the Council monitored. The machine hummed to life. Energy readings spiked across the control screens. Then in a flash of blue light, the metal sphere vanished. "Where did it go?" Jenny asked, checking her instruments. Marcus smiled and pointed to a screen showing the surface of Mars. "Right where we aimed it. Completely undetected by any Council surveillance. 3,000 miles away, Captain Roy Jenkins stood on the bridge of the Defiance watching technicians install the first working quantum tunnel drive into a human starship. The vessel didn't look like much from the outside. It was smaller than the diplomatic ships that had once carried human ambassadors to Council space. But appearances were deceiving. "How many more ships are ready?" Roy asked his chief engineer, Katie Mills. 12 are fully operational, Katie replied. 20 more will be ready by next month. The construction yards in the asteroid belt are working around the clock. Roy nodded. The asteroid belt had become humanity's secret weapon. While the Council watched Earth itself, they had no idea that humans had been quietly building a massive industrial complex in the space between Mars and Jupiter. Automated mining ships stripped resources from asteroids while hidden factories assembled the components for humanity's new fleet. "Any word from the advanced scouts?" Roy asked. "Captain Beth Collins checked in from the Vale Nebula yesterday," Katie said. "She found 3 systems that would be perfect for colonies. No Council presence within 50 light years." Roy walked to the star chart displayed on the bridge's main screen. Red dots marked Council patrol routes. Blue dots showed the locations where human scout ships had been operating for the past 2 years. The aliens had no idea how many human vessels were already moving through their space, invisible to their sensors and undetectable by their technology. "Signal the fleet," Roy said. "It's time to start Phase 2. On a hidden world called New Lexington, deep inside the Vale Nebula, General Pete Stone watched as the first class of graduates from humanity's secret military academy performed their final exercises. The young men and women wore black uniforms with no insignia, their faces hard with determination. "Remember," Pete told them, "you are not just soldiers. You are the future of human freedom. Every alien species in the Council has weaknesses. The Zephyrians rely too heavily on their energy shields. The Kalani can't function in electromagnetic interference. The Vorthans panic when separated from their command structure." Lieutenant Alex Stone, Pete's son, raised his hand. "What about their numbers, sir? The Council has thousands of ships." "Numbers don't matter if you can't coordinate them," Pete replied. "While they spend hours debating every decision, we'll be hitting them from 6 different directions. Speed, surprise, and superior technology will be our weapons." The training facility had been built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, completely invisible to Council sensors. Similar bases were being constructed throughout the galaxy, each one hidden in locations the aliens would never think to look. Humanity was building an invisible empire right under the Council's nose. Dr. Emma Ryan sat in her office aboard Port Freedom, reviewing intelligence reports from human agents scattered across Council space. Most people thought all humans had returned to Earth after the exile. They were wrong. Hundreds of human operatives had remained behind, integrating themselves into alien societies and gathering information that would prove invaluable when the time came for action. "The Zephyrian military is planning a major fleet exercise next month," reported Agent Kevin Brooks from the Altair system. "All their ships will be concentrated in one location for 3 days. The Kalani are having supply problems," added Agent Susan Taylor from the Vega colonies. "Their trade routes are vulnerable to disruption." Emma smiled as she compiled the reports. The Council thought they knew everything about humanity's capabilities. They had studied human history and concluded that humans were primitive warriors who relied on brute force. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the depths of space, the human ship Whisper drifted silently past a Council patrol. The alien vessel's sensors showed nothing but empty space, unable to detect the advanced stealth technology that Katie Mills had perfected. Captain Danny Rodriguez watched from his bridge as the alien ship continued on its patrol route, completely unaware that humanity had just violated their precious exile. "How many more systems have we scouted?" Danny asked his navigator. 47 so far," came the reply. "And we've found suitable colony sites in 31 of them." Danny nodded. While the Council celebrated their victory over humanity, human ships were already claiming worlds throughout the galaxy. Each new colony was built underground or inside asteroids, hidden from alien detection. Within 2 years, humanity would have more colonies than they'd ever had before the exile. Back on Earth, President Helen Carter stood before a secret session of world leaders. On the screen behind her, a map showed the true extent of human expansion. Red lines connected dozens of hidden colonies, secret military bases, and intelligence outposts scattered across the galaxy. "The Council thinks we're defeated," she said. "They believe we're sitting in our solar system, learning to be humble and peaceful. Instead, we've built the largest intelligence network in galactic history. We have colonies they don't know about, ships they can't detect, and military bases they can't find." The room fell silent as the world leaders absorbed the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished in just 5 years. "What happens when they discover the truth?" asked the president of Brazil. Helen Carter smiled coldly. "They won't discover it. They'll realize it when our ships appear in their space and there's nothing they can do to stop us." At that moment, alarms began sounding in Council space. A patrol ship near the Rigel system had detected unusual energy readings. By the time backup arrived to investigate, whatever had been there was gone, leaving only traces of an unknown technology. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions began as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Strange readings, missing patrol ships, and unexplained phenomena were being reported from dozens of systems. The Chancellor called for increased patrols and better sensors, but deep down, a cold fear was beginning to grow. The humans were supposed to be contained. They were supposed to be learning humility in their exile. But something was happening in the darkness between the stars, and the Council was beginning to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. Admiral Jack Norton stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, watching as 400 human warships prepared for battle. Each vessel was a masterpiece of technology that the Council had never seen before. Sleek, fast, and deadly, they looked nothing like the clumsy diplomatic ships that had once represented humanity in alien space. "Sir," Council fleet detected, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her sensor station. 3,000 ships approaching from multiple vectors. Jack nodded calmly. The Council had finally mobilized their entire military might to crush what they called the human infection before it could spread further. Representatives from 12 different alien species had united their fleets for this single purpose: to destroy humanity once and for all. "Signal all ships," Jack said. "Execute Battle Plan Omega." The human fleet scattered like leaves in the wind, each ship vanishing into quantum tunnel space before reappearing in seemingly random locations around the massive alien armada. The Council commanders had expected a traditional battle, ship against ship in orderly formations. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that could appear anywhere at any time. Captain Nina Foster's destroyer squadron materialized behind the Council's left flank, their weapons already firing. Kinetic projectiles slammed into alien shields at impossible speeds, punching through energy barriers that had never failed before. 3 Zephyrian cruisers exploded in seconds, their crews never understanding what had killed them. "Target their command ships," Nina ordered her gunners. "Make them blind and deaf." While Council ships tried to coordinate their response through slow committee decisions, human commanders acted on instinct and training. Captain Mike Thompson's battle group hit the Council's communication relays, cutting off orders between different alien fleets. Captain Lisa Zhang's fast attack craft swarmed the enemy's supply ships, crippling their ability to maintain their weapons and shields. In the Council command ship, Chancellor Vex stared at his tactical displays in growing horror. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had ever encountered. They didn't form battle lines or follow predictable patterns. Instead, they struck like lightning, hitting weak points before vanishing back into quantum space. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. "Over 400, sir," reported his tactical officer, a nervous Kalani whose antennae were twitching with fear. "And we haven't destroyed a single human vessel." The Chancellor couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Council's combined fleet was the most powerful military force in galactic history. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been penetrated. Yet somehow these primitive humans were tearing them apart. "All ships, concentrate fire on the nearest human vessel," the Chancellor ordered. "Overwhelm them with numbers." But the human ships refused to stay still long enough to be overwhelmed. Admiral Norton's fleet used tactics borrowed from Earth's ancient naval warfare, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. When the aliens concentrated on one group of human ships, another group would appear behind them. When they tried to surround human vessels, the humans would simply tunnel away and reappear somewhere else entirely. Dr. Emma Ryan, now Director of Human Intelligence Operations, coordinated the battle from her hidden command center on Port Freedom. Her network of spies throughout Council space had provided detailed information about every alien ship, every weakness, every command structure. She knew which species panicked under pressure and which ones relied too heavily on their technology. "The Forthans are breaking formation," she reported to Admiral Norton. "Their admiral is requesting permission to retreat." "Denied," Jack replied. "Hit them now while they're confused." Captain Tom Davis led his squadron straight into the heart of the Vorthan fleet. Unlike the energy weapons that aliens preferred, human ships carried electromagnetic pulse cannons that could disable alien electronics without destroying their hulls. Within minutes, dozens of Vorthan ships were drifting helplessly in space, their crews trapped inside powerless vessels. The battle's turning point came when Captain Rebecca Lee's stealth ships materialized directly next to the Council's flagship. The Zephyrian vessel's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, but they couldn't block the quantum torpedoes that human engineers had developed specifically for this moment. The flagship's shields collapsed in a cascade of blue light. Emergency alarms wailed across the massive vessel as hull breaches appeared throughout its structure. Chancellor Vex found himself thrown to the floor as his command deck shook apart around him. "Abandon ship," he screamed, but it was too late. The flagship broke apart in a brilliant explosion that could be seen across the entire battlefield. With their command structure destroyed, the Council fleet began to fall apart. Individual species started making their own decisions, some trying to retreat while others fought on desperately. The unity that had brought them together was shattered, replaced by chaos and fear. General Laura Hayes, watching the battle from her command post on New Lexington, smiled grimly as the reports came in. Human casualties were minimal while the alien fleet was being systematically destroyed. Every tactic she had developed during 5 years of secret preparation was working perfectly. "Signal all ships," Admiral Norton ordered as the remaining Council vessels began to flee. "Let them go. We want survivors to carry the message back to their home worlds." In 6 hours, the most powerful fleet in galactic history had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships limping home with news of their impossible defeat. Over half the Council's military strength had been destroyed or disabled, while humanity had lost only 37 vessels. As the last alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Jack Norton activated his communications array and broadcast a message on all Council frequencies. His words would be heard on every alien world, in every government chamber, and in every military headquarters throughout the galaxy. "People of the Council," he began, his voice calm and steady. "You exiled humanity because you said we were too aggressive. You were right. You said we expanded too quickly and solved problems with violence. You were right about that too." He paused, letting his words sink in across dozens of alien worlds. "But you made one mistake. You thought exile would teach us humility. Instead, it taught us something far more dangerous. It taught us that we don't need your permission to claim our place among the stars." The message continued for several minutes, but the most important words came at the end. "You wanted to see what humans could build with our aggression? Look around you. Count your dead ships. Remember this day, because this is just the beginning." On Council worlds throughout the galaxy, alien leaders stared at their screens in stunned silence. The species they had dismissed as primitive warmongers had just demonstrated military capabilities beyond anything they had imagined. The exile that was supposed to contain humanity had instead created something far more dangerous than they had ever feared. In the empty space where the great battle had been fought, debris from alien ships drifted among the stars. But there was something else floating in the darkness. Automated beacons left by the human fleet, broadcasting a simple message to anyone who might find them. The age of Council dominance is over. The age of human expansion has begun. President Rick Thompson stood at the window of his office in the White House, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed so distant. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Trinity's Edge, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The old Galactic Council was crumbling while humanity's influence spread to dozens of worlds. Rick had been a general before becoming president, and he understood something his predecessor had not. In a hostile galaxy, strength was the only language that mattered. Under his leadership, humanity had adopted what they called the human doctrine: rapid expansion, technological superiority, and protection for any species willing to reject council authority. "Mr. President," his aide announced, "Captain Beth Collins is requesting permission to proceed with the Kalani liberation." Rick nodded. The Kalani had been enslaved by the Zephyrians for over 3 centuries, their natural engineering skills exploited to build weapons for their oppressors. But intelligence reports suggested they were ready to rebel if given proper support. "Tell Captain Collins she has full authorization," Rick said, "and remind her that we're not just liberating the Kalani. We're showing the galaxy what the human Commonwealth stands for." Captain Beth Collins received the message aboard her flagship as it drifted invisibly near the Kalani homeworld of Nexus Prime. Her liberation fleet consisted of 40 human ships, each one equipped with the latest quantum technology and staffed by volunteers who believed in humanity's mission. "Begin Phase 1, Beth ordered her communications officer. "Send the message to all Kalani resistance cells." On the planet below, Kalani workers in the massive weapon factories received a coded transmission that they had been waiting years to hear. The message was simple: "The humans are here. Rise up." Within hours, the Zephyrian occupation forces found themselves under attack from within. Kalani engineers sabotaged weapon production lines, while Kalani technicians shut down power grids. The insect-like beings who had seemed so docile suddenly revealed they had been preparing for this moment for decades. Beth's ships appeared in orbit, just as the Zephyrian fleet arrived to crush the rebellion. But the aliens found themselves facing human military doctrine for the second time, and they were no better prepared than before. Human ships moved like wolves hunting sheep, appearing from quantum space to strike at weak points before vanishing. Again. "Target their troop transports first," Beth commanded. "We want to minimize civilian casualties on the surface." The battle was over in 3 hours. Zephyrian ships burned in orbit while on the planet below. Freed Kalani workers celebrated in the streets. For the first time in centuries, Nexus Prime belonged to its native people again, but humanity's victory was about more than military success. As Kalani engineer Zix-447 would later tell reporters, the humans didn't come as conquerors, they came as liberators. They asked for nothing except the chance to trade and cooperate as equals. Engineer Tony Garcia oversaw the construction of New Geneva Station, humanity's first megastructure and the diplomatic center of their growing empire. The massive orbital city was a testament to human engineering, built with help from their new Kalani allies whose natural technical abilities had proven invaluable. "How many species have requested meetings this month?" Tony asked his assistant. 23, came the reply, including 5 that are still officially council members. The station's docking bays were filled with alien ships from across the galaxy. Unlike the rigid hierarchy of the old council, humanity offered something revolutionary: genuine partnership based on mutual benefit rather than domination. Species kept their independence while contributing to collective defense and shared technological advancement. Dr. Chris Park worked in his laboratory deep within New Geneva Station, putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest breakthrough yet, the quantum web. This communication system would allow instantaneous contact across the entire galaxy, making the Council's slow message relays obsolete overnight. Final test. "In progress," Chris announced to his team. "Sending signal to Earth." On Earth, President Thompson received the transmission at exactly the same moment it was sent from a station 40,000 light-years away. The implications were staggering. While the Council still took weeks to coordinate actions across their territory, the human Commonwealth could now operate as a single unified entity, regardless of distance. The council, meanwhile, faced internal collapse. Chancellor Kess, the pragmatic Zephyrian who had replaced the disgraced Chancellor Vex, found herself struggling to maintain unity as member species began openly questioning their allegiance. The humans offer technology we have never seen, argued the Vorthan ambassador during a heated council session. They share knowledge freely while we hoard it. They protect the weak while we exploit them. They are dangerous, Kess replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Their expansion threatens the natural order. What natural order? Demanded the Alteran representative. The order where Zephyrians rule while the rest of us serve? The humans have shown us a better way. Similar debates were happening on Council, worlds throughout the galaxy. Species that had accepted Zephyrian dominance for millennia were suddenly seeing alternatives. The human Commonwealth's broadcasts reached every corner of Council space, showing images of freed slaves, thriving colonies, and alien species working together as equals. The final blow came when the Council attempted Operation Starfall, a desperate attack designed to destroy Earth itself and decapitate human leadership. Admiral Kate Sullivan, commanding Earth's newest dreadnoughts, turned the assault into humanity's greatest propaganda victory. All ships, defensive positions around Earth, Kate ordered, as the Council fleet emerged from hyperspace. Let them come to us. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration. Earth's orbital defenses, built with 5 years of advanced human technology and Kalani engineering, proved impenetrable. Council ships found themselves trapped in a web of energy fields and kinetic barriers that made their weapons useless. This is Admiral Sullivan to all Council vessels, Kate broadcast as alien ships began to surrender. You came here to destroy our home. Instead, you will witness our strength. The sight of Council warships burning in Earth's sky was broadcast live across the galaxy through the quantum web. Billions of aliens watched their supposedly invincible military forces suffer another humiliating defeat at human hands. Within days of Operation Starfall's failure, 12 more species formally withdrew from the Council to join the human Commonwealth. The Kalani, grateful for their liberation, became humanity's strongest advocates. The Vorthans, impressed by human military efficiency, offered their services as scouts and explorers. Even some Zephyrian colonies began sending secret envoys to discuss switching sides. President Thompson addressed the first Commonwealth Assembly, a gathering of representatives from over 30 species in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station. The chamber buzzed with dozens of different languages, as beings who had never met before worked together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. We stand at the beginning of a new age, Thompson declared. Not an age of human dominance, but an age of freedom for all thinking beings. The old council ruled through fear and division. We will build through cooperation and mutual respect, Applause filled the chamber from beings with claws, tentacles, and wings. Tony Garcia worked on expanding New Geneva Station to accommodate the growing number of species seeking to join the Commonwealth. The structure was already larger than any city on Earth, and plans called for it to eventually house representatives from every species in the galaxy. The age of council supremacy was ending, but the age of human leadership was just beginning. And unlike their predecessors, humanity had learned that true power came not from ruling others, but from showing them a better way to live among the stars. President Rick Thompson walked through the Great Assembly Hall of New Geneva Station, watching representatives from 63 different species prepare for the most important gathering in galactic history. 5 years had passed since Operation Starfall's failure, and the galaxy barely resembled the rigid hierarchy that had once defined interstellar politics. The Galactic Council, which had once commanded 47 species, now controlled fewer than 15 worlds. Species after species had abandoned the failing system to join humanity's Commonwealth, drawn by promises of equality and genuine partnership rather than the old ways of domination and exploitation. Mr. President, announced his aide, a young Kalani named Zix Prime whose engineering skills had helped design the station's expansion, all delegates are ready for your opening address. Rick nodded and made his way to the central podium. Around him, beings of every imaginable shape and size took their seats. Insect-like Kalani sat next to graceful Altarians. Tentacled Vorthons shared tables with crystalline Nexians. Even a small group of reformed Zephyrians had taken places in the back, their pale faces showing the humility their species had never known before. "Friends and allies," Rick began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber through translation devices that converted his words into dozens of languages. 10 years ago, humanity was cast out of galactic society for being too aggressive, too ambitious, too unwilling to accept our assigned place in the established order. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. Many of them had suffered under the Council's rigid caste system, where some species were deemed worthy of leadership, while others were condemned to serve. Today, we gather not as rulers and subjects, but as equals united by a simple belief that every thinking being deserves freedom, dignity, and the chance to reach their full potential among the stars. The applause was thunderous, coming from voices, clicks, whistles, and harmonics that created a symphony of approval from across the galaxy. Commander Alex Stone, son of the late General Pete Stone, stood on the bridge of his flagship as joint. Commonwealth fleets patrolled sectors that had once known only oppression. His ships carried crews from a dozen different species, all working together with an efficiency the old Council had never achieved. "Any word from the Rigel system?" Alex asked his communications officer, a Vorthon whose multiple arms could operate several control stations simultaneously. "The former Council garrison surrendered without a fight," came the reply. "Local populations are requesting Commonwealth protection." Alex smiled. This had become the pattern throughout the galaxy. As word spread of the Commonwealth's approach to governance, populations rose up against their council-appointed rulers. Rather than sending armies to crush these rebellions, Commonwealth forces arrived as peacekeepers, helping establish democratic governments and fair trade agreements. The technological revolution continued under Dr. Rachel Green's leadership. Her team had successfully tested the first prototype for interdimensional travel, opening possibilities that made even the vast galaxy seem small. While the remaining Council forces still struggled with their outdated jumpgate network, Commonwealth ships prepared to explore entirely new realms of existence. "Successful test completed," Rachel announced to President Thompson during their weekly briefing. "We can now travel not just between stars, but between dimensions themselves. The Council's exile was meant to trap us in one solar system. Instead, we've learned to transcend the boundaries of space itself." But perhaps the most significant change came when Chancellor Kess of the Zephyrians requested a private meeting with President Thompson. The once proud leader of the galaxy's most dominant species now stood in Thompson's office like a defeated supplicant, her translucent skin showing the stress lines of someone who had watched her empire crumble. "Mr. President," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "the Zephyrian Republic formally requests membership in the Human Commonwealth." Thompson studied her carefully. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, considering themselves superior to all other species. To see their leader humbled was both satisfying and sobering. "Your people enslaved the Kalani for 3 centuries, Thompson said quietly. "You exploited dozens of species and maintained power through fear and oppression. Why should we trust you now?" "Because we have learned what you tried to teach the galaxy from the beginning," Kess replied. "That strength comes not from ruling others, but from working together. Our old ways brought us nothing but defeat and isolation. We offer to abandon our supremacist ideology in exchange for the chance to earn our place as equals in your Commonwealth." The decision to accept the Zephyrians would be controversial, but Thompson understood the symbolism. If even the galaxy's former masters could change, then true peace might finally be possible. Admiral Jake Morrison, now an elderly statesman but still sharp as ever, stood with his son Jake Morrison Jr. in the observation deck of New Geneva Station. Below them, construction crews from multiple species worked together to build the next phase of the station's expansion. "Do you ever regret how it all turned out?" Jake Jr. asked. As the new Minister of Interstellar Affairs, he often wondered about the path that had led humanity from exile to galactic leadership. The older Morrison smiled, remembering the day 10 years ago when he had stood in the council chambers and heard humanity's sentence of exile. "Regret? Son, They did us the greatest favor in galactic history. If they hadn't cast us out, we never would have learned what we were truly capable of. Across the galaxy, the changes continued to spread. Former Council worlds celebrated their first free elections. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked together on Commonwealth projects. Children from dozens of different worlds played together in the parks of New Geneva Station, growing up in a universe where diversity was celebrated rather than feared. President Thompson prepared for the ceremony marking the 10th anniversary of Earth's exile. Representatives from across the Commonwealth had gathered to hear his address, broadcast live to every world in their territory. 10 years ago, the Council cast us out because they feared our potential, Thompson said as the cameras rolled. They were right to fear us, but they misunderstood what made us dangerous. It wasn't our weapons or our aggression. It was our belief that every being deserves freedom. He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives who had built something unprecedented in galactic history. They exiled us for refusing to accept limitations. In response, we didn't just break their limitations. We shattered the very concept that any species should rule over others. We proved that the greatest empires are built not on conquest, but on the simple idea that voluntary cooperation is stronger than forced submission. The ceremony concluded with the launch of humanity's first interdimensional exploration fleet. As the ships vanished into realms beyond normal space, they carried with them the values that had transformed a species of exiled outcasts into the leaders of a galactic renaissance. The Council had wanted to teach humanity humility. Instead, they had unleashed something far more powerful: the idea that freedom was worth fighting for, that cooperation was stronger than domination, and that even the smallest species could change the galaxy if they refused to accept the limitations others placed on them. Earth had been exiled from the Council. In response, they had built something better than any empire the galaxy had ever known.